Welcome to the latest episode of the Small Triumph Sports Library and Archives channel. I've been away from video production for a while. Early in the summer, I was working quite diligently on my GT6 project pretty much every day, and I encountered some snags when it came to correcting some of the accident damage. Actually ran up against the limitations of my knowledge, skills, and experience, and had to call in some help. But I have been making some progress with that. More recently, I've been on a couple of back-to-back vacations, one of them extended, but I am finally back with a new video. I'll provide an update on my progress with my GT6 a little bit later in the summer. This particular video is about some quirky details in the late Spitfire 1500 interior, of which I'm quite fond, and we will get into that topic on the other side of the intro. So as announced, this video is about quirky features in the late Spitfire 1500 interior. These are items that previous owners often take off and lose, and so a lot of new Spitfire owners aren't aware of these features. I originally intended this discussion to be part of a longer video with several different segments in it, but part of what I intended to do isn't ready yet and can wait till later on, so I'm gonna launch with this in the short term. The first feature that I'm going to discuss is one that is now fairly obsolete, since we pretty much all have cell phones, and cell phones that generally have some kind of flashlight function. But nevertheless, this item was at one time really useful. And that's the map light mounted to the dash on the passenger side of the car. Part number UKC3946, and this is the image of it from the late Spitfire 1500 factory parts catalog. This was part of a luxury package for the Spitfire 1500 until January 1976, when the luxury package became standard. I believe Mike Cook, in his book The Triumph Spitfire, indicates that this map light was introduced for the 1975 model year in the US. Back when my Spitfire was my daily driver in the early to mid 1990s, this little light proved really useful as I pulled over to glance at a map or look at some address I had scribbled down or something like that. So here's the one in my car, which is currently a repop for reasons I'll explain in a bit, but you can see the basic function here. So the light is off when it is folded up as shown, but when the instrument lights are illuminated, that is when your light switch is in either the park or on position, and I did not activate the light switch for this video, but when the instrument lights are illuminated, pulling down the map light activates the switch and turns on the light, and it'll swivel and articulate to illuminate whatever document you're reading or whatever business you're doing in the dark. All right, so this is the original map light from my 1980 Spitfire 1500. I disconnected it about a decade ago, and then I replaced it with a reproduction a few years after that. This obviously has a short in it somewhere. It was blowing the fuse for its circuit. My father traced it to the map light, and I just disconnected it, wrapped the wires and tucked them out of the way, and just drove the car without a functioning map light for a while. As I said at the outset, most of us have cell phones now with flashlights and all of that, and so the map light isn't really a necessary thing, but I do like for all the features of my car to function, which is why I eventually got a reproduction. I just sort of skipped trying to take this apart and repair it, although I'm sure it can be repaired, but it's something I'll maybe do later on down the line. Disconnected this, and problems with the fuse, and the circuit stopped, so this was definitely the problem. So how this map light works. So obviously, first and foremost, we've got power here coming in this black wire, which actually wraps around, and you can see it goes directly to the bulb here. So that's where the power is. How it turns off and on when the light switch is in either park or on position. So you can see here at this joint you've got nylon here, and then when I turn it you can see that there is a wheel, metal wheel with indentations, and obviously there is a ball and spring, and the ball fits into those indentations in the different positions here. And then when you rotate it so that the ball is on the vinyl, that's in this position here, this folded up position, what that does is it interrupts the ground. So the light is off in that position. When you rotate it down and the ball is contacting metal again, then you have ground and the light comes on again, with power coming in, and power's coming in when the light switch is in the park or on position. Now, with this original, and what I was used to over many years of driving the car is, first of all, if you look at this, because I'll turn around this way. So if you look at this, the nylon part is very solid. It doesn't rock or rotate in there. And when you fold it up, it's a very positive hard stop, and it's off, and it's pretty firm. It doesn't rattle. I've never had a problem with this dropping down and turning itself on at night or anything like that, which is a problem that a lot of people encounter with these. So that's how this functions. The reproduction is in many ways very close to the original. So there's a lot to like really about the reproduction. I'm not sure about how long it will last or anything like that, but there's a lot to like about the reproduction. But there is one interesting and important difference, at least with the one that I have in my possession, and it has to do with the nylon here in this joint that effectively turns the light off and on when there's power coming into the light. And that is, while this nylon piece is very solid in the original, in the reproduction, it actually moves. It is almost like it's in channels or grooves, and each side actually moves independently of the other. So I can push them both up, I can push them both down, within not a wide range, but they move. And I don't know whether that is because it's not as well made or whether it is a design choice, but it does make that reproduction behave differently. So with the reproduction, and this confused me for a while, so this is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. With the reproduction, when I fold it up to what feels like a hard stop, like this on the original, which is going to cut this original one off, what happens with the reproduction is it droops down ever so slightly and the light stays on. And with the reproduction, you actually have to push it to a hard stop and then push it a little bit further with a kind of spring action, kind of snap spring action, and then that cuts it off. And I wasn't really used to that, and it kind of confused me. Let me show you what I mean. So that's what I have to say about this particular device. I'm not to be trusted perhaps in general, but especially with electrical matters. But hopefully I have accurately related the basic principles behind how this functions, and if I've made a mistake, I'm sure someone will let me know. This device was a real lifesaver for me back in the day. I really did pull over the side of the road and use it, maybe in a panic once or twice back in the day. But it certainly has been a long time since I've actually used it. One of the reasons I really wanted to talk about it is because it is one of those things that is frequently lost. A lot of times you have to dismantle the dash and take the dash trim off in order to get to the transmission. And it's one of those things where if people don't use a device like this, it'll get cast aside and lost. And so I suspect that if you're the third or fourth or fifth or 15th owner of a Spitfire, there's a pretty good chance that this little device is long gone. And I think there are quite a few Spitfire owners who don't realize that Spitfires actually came with that type of device. And I always really liked it. I thought it was kind of a cool little feature. Next, I want to talk about a set of interior features that are also often lost, but these arguably have far more practical value today. These are the seatbelt buckle clips that Triumph used for convenience. These are part number ZKC1550, which is referred to in the factory parts catalog as a parking device. So I guess it's where you park your seatbelt buckle. As you can see from this factory parts catalog image, these bits mount at the two bolts at the leading edge of the convertible top frame bracket at the B post. You can clip the seatbelt buckle into them, and that way you aren't fishing around behind the seat for the buckle when you get into the car. These really are very helpful devices, and some people aren't aware of the existence of these items because over time they often got removed and lost. I was lucky in that mine were rattling around the trunk of my Spitfire when I got it. When I figured out what they were, I think from finding the factory image of them in the Roadster Factory's Spitfire 1500 parts catalog, I thought they were cool. And I thought they would be useful, so I installed them and started using them, and they quickly broke, which is probably another reason why these items often are tossed. The design is actually kind of poor. Here are the original pieces. There is a metal bracket. It's gold. It appears to be cadmium plated. And attached to the bracket is a basic spring housed and kept in tension by a relatively flimsy plastic cover that is riveted to the bracket. I thought my original items looked pretty good when I pulled them out of the trunk and cleaned them up, but the plastic probably already had some stress fractures, and when I put them in use, the plastic quickly blew out the backside. You can really see that in the image at the bottom there. I drilled out the rivets to see if there was anything I could do to repair these, but I didn't really know of any good repair options. This was probably around 1993. Lord knows what I tried back then, maybe super glue, which was futile, or something along those lines. And when it failed, I just carefully stored away the pieces, possibly for future restoration, and just carried on without them. So much later, during the pandemic, I found someone who had copied and 3D printed the plastic covers. And I'll not provide specifics here, as this person is a hobbyist and not a business. That said, I suspect a fairly simple web search will probably reveal the information if you're interested. And I've found this person to be incredibly generous and helpful. In fact, I've worked with him on a few projects, and he's been fantastic. But he offered to 3D print the plastic portion one has to have the original components, the original bracket and spring in order to do this. Those have not been reproduced, but if you have the original bits and pieces, you can get a 3D printed copy of the plastic cover. And in fact, what I have on is the latest sort of beefed up version of that plastic cover. So hopefully it's a good bit tougher than the original. Here's the one on the driver's side of my car. Here's the one on the passenger side of my car. Here's what it looks like from the rear. You can kind of tell that mine really needs some adjustment. The fit of the buckle is looser than it should be. But these are generally sandwiched in behind the convertible top, which is down 99% of the time. And that helps to ensure that they stay in place, but I've never had the buckles pop out while they are in the receiver there. So what I did for the many years that these items were broken and I wasn't using them is something that probably a lot of people do. And that is, when I got out of the car, I pulled the seat belt out and I tucked it in between the outer part of the headrest and the top of the seat and kind of wrapped it around the outer bolster. And the seat held the seat belt in that way. And that makes it really easy to put back on when you hop back in the car. However, leaving the seat belt wrapped around the seat in that way for an extended period of time does distort the seat cushion somewhat and isn't really ideal. I know some people buy the aftermarket seatbelt guides that attach to the metal base of the headrest, and I'm sure those are practical and I'm sure they work. In my opinion, they look a little bit odd, but I'm sure they are convenient. But overall, I really like the original items and am glad that I am able to use them again. And here's a quick little video just to show them in action. That was rather clumsy. I need to get much better at holding my phone and videoing myself doing operations, but you get the point. I want to end on a relatively philosophical note. Just this summer, I finally got my hands on the Codename Bomb video. This is the documentary that came out in 2009 that focuses on the Spitfire and GT6. I had seen the bonus disc years ago. Someone took the bonus disc and ripped it and uploaded it to a video platform out there. So I'd come across and seen that, or at least most of the features on the bonus disc, but I'd never seen the feature disc or any of the bonus items on the feature disc. And I was watching it, and among the things, and by the way, there are a lot of really great things in that movie. There are some aspects of it that maybe aren't so great, but there's a lot of great stuff in the movie. And among the things that I really enjoyed were the discussions with the Triumph stylists, the three men in particular that you see there on your screen: John Ashford, Dave Keepax, and Richard Hunt. And one of the things that really came across in conversations with them is sort of how much loving care they took into designing various exterior and interior features of the car. Now, obviously, they're operating within budgetary constraints or regulatory constraints or what have you. Cars are always sort of collaborative efforts. But to me, just watching the way that they talk about the work that they did and the way that they cared about the end product really kind of fed into the reason why, while I'm not a purist, as people who insist on originality in all things are called, often with negative connotations, I'm not a purist, but I've always leaned toward originality. And while I'm really impressed with wild customization and the artistic creativity that goes into that, and I have ample room in my life to admire that, And while I'm open to and supportive of modifications and upgrades for performance or convenience, or even sort of mixing and matching different style cues from earlier and later cars and things like that, both of which are things that I've done a little bit of with my Spitfire. Yeah, when you stick with originality or things that are mostly original, you're not only preserving history, but you're also honoring the people who put blood, sweat, and tears into designing these cars that we are enjoying decades and decades after Triumph's demise. And I really like that idea. Of course, I'm sure the gentleman you see on the screen there could have gone through a variety of things that they would have done or would like to have done under different circumstances, or would have done differently under different circumstances. So it ultimately cuts all ways, I guess. That's basically it for this video. My next video, I think, will involve discussing a couple of reproduction items for GT6s. I do want to close this video out, though, by just sort of briefly referencing sort of odd quirk with my own Spitfire. And it has to do with the tonneau cover fixings on the dash. I don't know if anybody else has a Spitfire like mine. I'm not going to talk this one to death. So I'm going to show it to you in the closing images, and I hope to be back soon.